Is 2023 the year you finally tell your boss that you're quitting? There's a mixed bag of trends and results that indicate yes, you should, but there's also some warnings here. So we're going to cover both sides next on Today in Tech. Welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Is the Great Resignation officially over? Are offices starting to push back on getting people back into the office? The Magic 8 Ball? Kind of a mixed bag on both. So we're going to talk about all these issues. Joining me to discuss these trends is Lucas Mirian. He's a senior reporter at Computer World. Lucas, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks.
All right. So you wrote an article a couple weeks ago about the Great Resignation that happened, I would say, 2020 to 2022. Where a lot of employees were quitting because of the pandemic, or they felt that they wanted to work at home all the time, or there were lots of other trends going on, but it was dubbed the Great Resignation, where companies saw a lot of employees just quit their jobs. And so you wrote an article recently, basically citing some statistics that say that it's still going to happen in 2023. I want you to take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, it's ongoing. So what's happening is a lot of employees they were forced to reevaluate their career paths, and they realized there were certain things that they weren't willing to sacrifice: flexibility in their jobs, being able to work remotely from wherever they wanted to live. Pay, of course, was one of the things that a lot of employees were unhappy with. Benefits were huge, and so they started reevaluating. Where am I going in this career right now?
Right.
And with the unemployment rate just tanking, I mean, we're down in technology to like it went from 2.2% in October to 2% in November for technology jobs. That compares with the overall unemployment rate of 3.7%. So it's virtually no unemployment in technology right now. You want a job, if you try hard enough, you're going to get a job. It's not that difficult. There's a dearth of talent out there. Now,
what's interesting, too, is that, at the same time that this has been happening, you also saw a lot of big tech companies within the last month or two, like, Facebook / Meta, Amazon, Microsoft. They all had big layoffs,
right.
Which causing a lot of people to say, oh, gee, maybe this isn't the best time to kind of get a job. You have an opinion about kind of where those tech layoffs were happening, right?
Yeah, and mainly when I talked to the HR experts out there, they said that these are middle management. A lot of these are middle management layoffs, where they kind of panicked during the Great Resignation, and they realized, we don't want to lose talent, so they just hired, and then they were bloated with a lot of middle management jobs that they just didn't need to keep, so they started letting people go. The other thing they did is they hired people with specificity, with certain technology skills that can become stale over time.
Okay.
So if a company, let's say, uses a certain database, and they decide to change databases, now they have a bunch of experts in one type of database, and they need to hire new people.
Right.
So they're looking for more general technologists. And one trend right now is there's a lot of companies out there that are removing college degree requirements from the job positions.
Right, and they're looking into like apprenticeship programs, right?
That's huge right now. A lot of apprenticeships. They want to train them up themselves, because that also speaks to retention. You tend to have more loyalty toward a company that brought you up through the ranks, and you're more flexible. So you may be learning about databases one month, you may be learning about programming the next month, management. Your career grows with that company.
Right. Now, there used to be kind of a feeling in the workplace, or the corporate culture of there, is that they didn't want to invest in training or employee growth, because there was a feeling that if we trained our employees to do better, then they would basically take that training and then get another job and quit.
They're going to take.
I've heard that from other people that have, as an excuse for not giving training. Like, those days are over, right?
They're going to do it one way or another.
Yeah.
You can either help them along in their careers and
keep them.
And keep them for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. I mean, these days you're lucky if you get them for 2. But if you treat your employees right, they're going to stick around a little longer. You're going to be able to use those resources. But if there are better opportunities for them, you're not going to keep them, no matter what you do. So you want to do them right. Keep them as long as you can by treating them right. Another big thing is peer relationships. I just read this one survey. It's in one of my more recent stories about how peer relationships are number one. They're the biggest reason that employees stay with a company. So having a good company culture, you can do that remotely and through it in a hybrid workplace. People want to connect with other people.
Explain what you mean by a peer relationship. Is it just like the person that's stuck next to you in the cube next to you, or is it something else?
Well, it's making a concerted effort to create a community, a company culture, coworkers who you can depend on, who you can talk to about issues. And back in the day, I'm just going to make this analogy with a newsroom. We didn't have any walls. There were no cubicles.
Right.
There were just desks in a big room. And if you needed a source, hey, Brian, you got a source? You shouted over to him and he gave you a source for a story, for example. It's the same sort of thing. It's about having a tight relationship with your peers who can, with whom you can commiserate and with whom you can also work out problems.
Old school newsrooms, those were the best, 'cause especially when they didn't ban smoking too, and most of the reporters and editors were smoking all the time too. That brings me back, Lucas.
Yeah.
In terms of, so from the statistics that I was reading about, it looks like about half of U.S. workers said that they would be looking for a new job in 2023. Do either of those numbers, the 50% that do versus the 50% that might not be looking, do any of those stats surprise you in one way or the other? And again, these are general workers versus IT. I think we'll get into IT in a second, or tech jobs.
Actually, I have a survey from this HR services provider, iSolved, that they did in December. Where they come up with these names, I don't know. But iSolved back in December said about that many for tech workers too, about half.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's pretty accurate. About half of workers this year. It's not saying they're going to be actively look, I'm leaving, but they're exploring their options.
Right. What was interesting from the iSolved survey as well was that the respondents in that survey said they were concerned about the economy, that they might want to jump, or about their company in general. And so they might jump before they are pushed. I mean, that's also another thing. It's like, when you're asked about whether you're going to look for a job, is it more about I'm ready? I know that there's low unemployment, so I'm going to go out and actively look for a job before the layoffs happen, or do I sit and then hope that maybe I survive the layoffs, or the company is going to be doing fine and they're going to just shower me with more money and more benefits in order to get me to stay. Like, do you get that there's two different ways of approaching it?
Yeah, I feel like employees still have the upper hand right now. They really do. But the unemployment rate, it's for both general and technology careers, as low as it is right now. You get to say where you're going in your career. And some of these layoffs, like I said, they're really due to bad hiring practices. And a lot of people bring up Twitter, and Twitter's kind of an outlier. It's Elon Musk basically flexing his muscles out there and saying this is the way it's going to be or else. And look, I'm not going to put it past him. It could work for him, but I don't think it's a good strategy for most companies. You want people to feel like they have security in their jobs. If they don't, if they get a feeling that they may not, because we have been teetering on a recession for quite a few quarters now. Yeah. They'll walk, because there are jobs out there that are paying more. And that's the other thing you have to remember is, look, are you paying the salaries that the rest of the industry is paying? And if you're not, you're going to start losing workers.
Right. Now, interestingly, this also comes at the same time when some offices are pushing back. There's a Wall Street Journal story today in today's paper that says several investment companies, for example, are now sending directives to employees, kind of urging them back into the office in a nice way, or telling them that they might face termination if they don't kind of comply with either existing hybrid work policies. Apparently there's a lot of companies that they were like, hey, here's our hybrid work office culture, and then most of the people just ignore that. Yeah. So there's a little pushback that I'm seeing, and again, they never really admit that maybe the reasons for getting people back in the office, a lot of it can be like there's a lot of office space that's just not being used, and a company sees that and they're like, we're spending a lot of money on an office that nobody's using, and that's part of it. I mean, part of it could be middle managers that feel like that they need to have that face to face. So you see you see reasons given as, oh, we want collaborative culture, we want corporate culture to be working together in the office. And again, I don't want to judge one way or the other, because I like both. I like working at home sometimes, and I like being here in the office, especially with Chris, the guy behind the controls there. I like seeing him on a regular basis because he's a cool dude.
How long is that beard now, by the way?
Oh, he doesn't have. He didn't hook up the
controller.
It's like down to here. It's awesome.
Okay.
We'll get him on another show, or we'll get him in a later show, and he'll show off again. But again, I don't want to take that extreme position of like, you must be in here, because again, there's so many different types of, like an IT help desk. Do you need to be in so that you can collaborate with other people that may be able to solve the problems that other, people have? If you're a developer, that collaboration works. If you're an engineer and you're designing a new car, sometimes that collaboration works. And again, during the pandemic, we saw lots of software companies that were trying to make that same type of work virtual. Right. But I don't know exactly how successful or not successful that was.
I have yet to speak to a single HR representative or industry expert that has said that's a good idea to force your employees back into the office.
Yeah.
And the companies that are doing this, again, I'm going to use the word outlier. They're outliers, like Twitter saying that you must come back into the office or else you'll be fired. You're going to lose workers.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So in your opinion, then the balance, if you were looking between a balance between workers and employers, you would say the employees still have the upper hand here, right?
Absolutely, they do, and it's not a bad thing. It really isn't, because we saw productivity leap during the pandemic.
Really interesting, because I've seen things that have said the opposite, that productivity has actually gone down.
More recently, it did take a step down, but it's still far above where it was prior to the pandemic. So it's still above that, but it did drop a little.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is, it dropped, and I wrote about this, when companies started requiring workers to come back into the office.
Oh, okay.
Some people were saying, well, it's dropping because they're getting into a lull, they're getting lazy, But what coincided with that were a company saying you need to come back into the office at least 3 days a week, or some companies saying you have to come back in 5 days a week minimum. Right.
So there's another item I wanted to kind of get your opinion on too. There was a survey from MRI Software that surveyed a bunch of professionals and saying, what do you want in your office, or what might get you back into the office if asked. Yeah. And a lot of them are saying that they want hotel-style amenities. And this includes things like socializing areas, outdoor spaces, on-site cafes, air conditioning. I didn't realize that was a problem for a lot of...
thing that was necessary.
Yeah, and then, of course, gyms and, like exercise facilities and changing facilities, things like that. It felt like to me that these were not amenities that were... I mean, yes, you see these in hotels, but the way that the headline was written, it felt like, employees are being babies for asking for something like that. But, what was interesting too is that some of them said that would be a deal breaker. If you didn't have like an on-site gym, I wouldn't take this job, or I wouldn't work for this company. How can employers get kind of people back into the office? What kind of incentives should they start working on with their employees, understanding that employees probably still have the power?
Right. I think that is a part of it, that they need to rejigger office spaces. So fewer cubicles, fewer doors, more collaborative spaces. And there has to be a reason that an employee comes back into the office, not just because.
Yeah.
You need to tell them, well, we want you in these days of the week because we want you to collaborate on these projects, and it's necessary for you to be together to collaborate on this, brainstorming, or even culture building. Find reasons to have employees come back into the office. But to just put out an edict that all employees must be in these days of the week, what are you looking to do there?
Yeah.
And if you have too much office space, I got news for you. That office space is becoming valuable for other things, for residential and for business,
right?
For consumer businesses. If you look in Manhattan, a lot of the previous office space is now being turned into residential space and business space, consumer business space.
Right.
So it is it's being sold or leased for other purposes. So take the space you have and rejigger it, make it more of a collaborative space. So, and not just collaborative when you're in the office, but making it more appealing for people who are working remotely and may need to dial in. So you have, monitors that are at eye level,
Right.
just having them up high on a wall in an office. You have them in a collaborative space that they're all at eye level. So when people are seated, they feel like they're in the office. I agree that amenities are great, but I don't think that's what's simply going to draw people into the office. Give them a purpose while they're in there. Why are you calling me into the office? We talked earlier.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. It shouldn't be an all or nothing kind of proposition for a lot of companies either. I think if you're a manager of someone, you really need to look at the work that your employee does and say, is this the type of work that needs to be done in an office, or is it something that can be done at home? For example, I need to be here in this studio because A, it's a great studio, but B, it's really hard to do this remotely, or nobody needs to see the background of my house where I am.
Right. Yeah, that's part. There's also guilt. There's executive guilt. I love this one, but it's true. You think about it. You go to a financial services company, and some workers have to be in the office. Bank tellers have to be behind that counter.
Yeah.
And so they feel guilty that they're allowing some workers to work remotely or hybrid and others that have to be in. But instead of saying everybody has to be in the office because some people are in the office, give more job flexibility to those people who do have to come in. So maybe they don't have to work 5 straight days a week. Maybe you exchange days with other employees. Maybe work 3 days behind there.
Yeah.
And you have to do work they could do remotely otherwise, and you have other employees come in, and you kind of reshuffle the work schedule.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to sort of respecting your employee and then figuring out what works best for both the employer and the employee. Talking rather than demanding, it always seems to work better too, right?
Quality of life. During the pandemic, people really reevaluated their careers, their lives. What am I putting my time into? And you saw a lot of this, especially with stay-at-home parents who wanted to be around their children more. Now there's an opportunity to do that and complete the work that they want to do. Again, productivity rose, and it's still above where it was prior to the pandemic.
Right.
This was a good thing, not a bad thing.
So do you think that this trend is going to sort of continue throughout the year, or do you see as the year goes on that maybe we see fewer and fewer employees kind of looking for new jobs, or is this the new normal? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's going to continue for a time. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if it's going to happen for the entire year. But
I thought I lent my crystal ball to you, Lucas.
Well, from what I've seen, just prior to the holidays, yes, it's going to continue into 2023.
Yep.
The resignation is going to continue. I mean, you had more than 12 months of more than 4 million employees quitting their jobs every single month for over a year. I mean, that's tremendous. That's never happened before. And so people are taking this seriously. They're quitting for pay, they're quitting for benefits, they're quitting for flexibility in their work. And I think you are going to see a little bit of the concern if your company isn't stable. They're going to be like, maybe I should go somewhere where it is a little more stable and I don't have to be concerned with being laid off because there's plenty of work out there.
And especially if you're in tech, because the low unemployment rate at the moment, like this is a great opportunity to, at least if you're not actively looking, start kind of like brushing out that resume and getting ready. Not because you're going to get pushed, but more of like, what do you want out of your work life balance? Like, what do you want in your career? And you rarely get an upper hand, right? Like if, I'm going to use a card analogy when you're playing poker. Like sometimes you get those, you rarely get 3 aces in the hand. So when you get it, take advantage of it, right?
Yeah, I don't think this is a push kind of thing either. I think it's a good thing. It's for too long the companies had the upper hand. And I don't think they realized that when you get into a professional career, you're serious about what you're doing. This is part of your life. This is a big part of your life. And I would say give the benefit of the doubt to the employee. They want to work. They want to do a good job for you. They take pride in what they're doing. And they just want to be treated properly. They want to be treated like adults. And they don't want to be forced to do one thing or the other. So if you treat your employees well, they're going to treat you well back. That's
All right.
kind of mine.
All right. That's all the time we've got today, Lucas. Thanks again for joining us on Today in Tech.
My pleasure.
All right. And thank you for watching. If you don't forget to like, subscribe, and just watch us each week for new technology topics that we discover on Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. We'll see you next time.